Hey guys, Lisa the Bear here. I am finally back in my sewing room. We are making shorts jumper. I don't know. We're using this vintage pattern, Simplicity 7821, and we're doing this one. I found like the best set of bed sheets to make this with. It's like a 90s trapper keeper. Let's do it. Next thing I do is cut the fabric. This pattern had been used previously, so I did not worry about transferring it. I just put it right on the fabric and cut away, making sure to leave my notches and stuff out and ready to use. One thing about vintage patterns is if they have not been used before, I do try to transfer them. I transfer them onto a clear shower curtain. I just picked these up at the dollar store. But it gives a little bit of longevity to the pattern because then you're not cutting into the original tissue. You're actually able to save that pattern and use it over and over and over again. Next, I mark all of my darts that are in this pattern. This pattern had quite a few. It had 2 on the front as well as a long dart that ran from the apex of my chest all the way down to the top of my hip. To mark these darts, I just use a Crayola Ultra Washable marker in the color that is closest to my fabric, and I do mark them on the wrong side of the fabric just in case. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect those points of my darts together so I can see where my triangle falls. I'm using my straight edge to get a nice crisp line for this. So that long dart that I mentioned earlier, the pattern actually suggests that you baste the outside of it and then slash the dart apart because it is so big. This is me basting those edges. You baste a fabric to prevent it from stretching whilst you're working with it. After I basted that dart, I went ahead and lined up the notches and pinned that together. I did that with all of my darts. After I pinned those darts together, I went ahead and sewed them on my machine. I started at the widest point and finished at the thinnest point or the tip of the triangle of each dart. And I do this by running my machine off of the dart so I don't do a finishing knot. I actually pull that thread and then hand tie it. This just helps reduce bulky. After finishing the darts, I went ahead and attached the pockets to the front of the jumper. You do this by finishing off your edges and lining them up with the marks on the front and then just sewing them down. We sewed our front piece to our back piece at the shoulders, and then we also connected it down the sides. One thing that's great about vintage patterns is they really are timeless. You can make them as modern or as traditional as you want. For example, this pattern is from the 60s, but I'm using a fabric that's very clearly from like late 80s, early 90s, and it's giving it a new life. It's giving it a different edge. One thing about vintage patterns is even if it's labeled as a simple sew or an easy to do, they assume that you know a lot of previous sewing knowledge. So they won't put things in like how to finish your garment, or they won't go into intense detail, at least in my understanding, of how to do some things like stay stitching, back stitching, how to do darts, so on and so forth. So how you finish your garment is really up to you. So how I'm going to finish this garment is I did not feel like rethreading my entire serger, so I just went ahead and did a zigzag stitch down all of those raw edges. You can also pink your edges, where you just take a pair of pinking shears and trim down all the seam allowances. This doesn't stop fraying, but it does help prevent it. All right, our next step was to put in the zipper. This is a zipper that I had lying around in my stash. Yes, I went with bright yellow. If you look at the fabric, you can see that there are some yellow accents in it, kind of little like pops of yellow. And this zipper just happened to match that perfectly. I think it adds a nice little contrast to this 90s Trapper Keeper pattern. When I first started sewing, zippers used to be the absolute worst for me. I used to struggle with them so bad. But as I've been sewing and as I've learned how to put zippers into different materials in different ways, I've found that they're really not as intimidating. The penultimate step in this pattern is applying the neck facing. After lining up the notches all around the neck hole, you sew that in by the seam allowance, you flip it, and then you tuck it under. So you end up with a nice finished seam along the neck bias. And there we go. Nice crisp lines, nice finished seam. And that's it. The step after that is just to finish off the leg holes, and it's a day. It's a great little pattern. The shorts are nice and comfy. I can wear a t-shirt underneath it if it's a little bit chillier. The zipper provides a nice accent. And I put some nice little buttons on those pockets, which are roomy and easy to use. And that's all from me. Have a chaos day.